Hello, hi. I'm Kirsten and I'm a Buddhist. It's a pretty good job I'm up here. So I don't actually remember much about my childhood actually. I guess one of like the biggest events that happened was when I was 9, which was when my parents divorced. And quite unusually, me and my brother stayed with my dad. So my dad is the kindest man in the world. He's so reliable. He's just always there. And if I was like a teenager and at a party and I wasn't having a good time, I'd just call him and he'd just come, like no matter what time it was. So I've got a lot of gratitude actually for the way that he brought me and my brother up. Semi-decent human beings. So yeah, there's a lot of gratitude towards my dad. The flip side of that is that I've had quite a difficult relationship with my mum. So I guess I was quite young when I stopped living with her. I was 9, and then gradually, as I was getting older, she was moving further away. I'm from Colchester, and she used to live like round the corner. And I'd see her kind of every couple of weeks. It was fine, and then I got a bit older and she moved to London, and then I got a bit older and she moved to Telford, and then when I was 14 she moved to Canada, which was 9 hours flight, so that was quite far, and at that point I was seeing her maybe once or twice a year, and that was quite hard, growing up and not having that relationship. And I think because I was quite young, I just had all of these feelings of well, now I see it as hatred, actually, and this resentment and the sense of abandonment. I just kind of felt like I'd just been left, and I felt at the time like the reason why I'd been left is because I wasn't good enough in some way. It's quite a childish kind of way to see that separation, but it was like, oh, I wasn't a good enough daughter or a good enough person, and that's why she didn't want to stay. And the way that manifested was that I thought, right, okay, I'm going to be better then. I'll be better, and I'll be the best. And I just kind of put all of my energy into my academic life. So I was quite lucky, actually. I always loved to read. I love stories, I love language and hearing about people. And so I found school quite easy, and that meant that I could just kind of put everything into being better and being the best. So I went to a mixed comp in Colchester, and it was a decent school, and if you wanted to do well you could, and I was lucky enough to be supported through that. I worked really hard, got quite competitive, I guess, talking about the wheel of life. I was very Asura realm. But it was fine because I was winning, so it wasn't really causing any issues. And that was fine until I was 16, like all good, apart from PE, but that doesn't matter. I was living this life by trying to kind of be the best at something and trying to validate myself through that. And then when I went on to do my A-levels, I actually moved schools. I went to a boys' grammar school, which, caused a lot of problems anyway. But I think the main issue was that I was no longer the best at anything. I was kind of surrounded by these testosterone-fueled man boys that knew Latin and Greek and liked maths. And it was a very different environment to what I'd been in, and it was very painful, actually. Something like what Yeshadova was saying about losing that sense of self. Like, by no longer being the best academically, I didn't really know what I was anymore. I was just like, oh, well, I'm very mediocre now, and I didn't really know how to define myself. And it just became really, really painful. I just kind of lived these 2 years, like, really, really suffering with not being the best anymore, which sounds like quite egotistical, but that's how it felt at the time. It was this real sense of like having lost myself. But I stayed, and I just worked really, really hard. And I came out of it, and I did really well, and I achieved something that I'd been dreaming of since I was a child. I got into Oxford to study English, so I was now able to read all these books all day and write essays, and like that's what I was meant to be doing. So it was just a really, really pleasant time. And it's funny, kind of looking at that goal. I don't really know where that came from actually. Like neither of my parents went to uni. No one was ever like pressuring me, saying that that's what it was. But that seed had been planted, I think, by at that point when I was like, oh, I need to be the best, and I need to kind of quash that sense of abandonment and try and validate myself in some way. So yeah, I was in Oxford for 3 years and just had the best time ever. I just met so many inspiring people and just amazing conversations, like amazing interests, and I got to just study something I was really, really passionate about. And it was wonderful. And yeah, I was like, oh, great. Everything was fine until I realised that I couldn't stay there forever. They wouldn't let me. And suddenly I had to go into this other world, this real world, and be a grown-up. So at that point in my life, I was making this big life choice, and I kind of reverted back to my childish mindset. I was like, oh, okay, well, what's the best thing you can do? Like, what's the most prestigious thing? What are people going to care about? What's going to give you, like, status? So I became a chartered accountant. Yeah. It's funny now. Yeah, I thought that was it. Which is funny because I went against a lot of advice to do that. I was being very, very kind of dogmatic, and it was that thing of like trying to prove a point and trying to impress people. When really people don't care if you're an accountant, and they rarely want to talk about it. And so I'd reached this point, and I was like, why am I doing this? I was really, really struggling with accountancy exams. I'm not very logically minded or mathematical. I didn't even have a calculator when I went to my first day of college. Like, just had no idea what was going on. And again, I was just suffering because I was trying to be the best at something, and it just wasn't, well, it was something that I was finding really, really difficult to motivate myself to do. So me and my friend, I was at my friend's for dinner one night, and we were talking about how we felt just like a bit lost, and we didn't really know what we were doing. We'd been out of uni for a couple of years, and we were just like, what are we doing with our lives? Like, why are we working in the way that we're working? And we just felt a bit directionless, actually, just a bit lost. So what we did was we wrote a list. It was kind of like New Year's resolutions, so a bit appropriate, but it was like middle of summer. And it was things that we just wanted to achieve to kind of mark a sense of moving forward. So it was things like learn Mandarin, ni hao. It was, what else is on there? It was go to a Scandinavian country, do a half marathon. And the last thing on the list was go on a meditation retreat. I can't remember which one of us thought of it. It seemed to come out of nowhere. But 11 and a half months passed, and we were looking at our list. We'd given ourselves a year to do it, and we were like, oh no, we haven't done the retreat. What are we going to do? So we were like frantically Googling, like, I need to get on a meditation retreat in the next 2 weeks. And the LBC popped up, and we saw that, oh, there's a sub-25 class being led by Alex and Gus on Friday. Why don't we just do that, and we can tick it off, and then we feel great. So that's what we did. We just went along on that Friday, and I just remember this sense, the first time walking in the London Buddhist Centre, it was just like this wave of relief. Just such a warm, positive atmosphere. It's very, very cheesy, but it's just like going home. I just felt really comfortable straight away. I was like, oh, make a peppermint tea, just like sitting looking at the beautiful paintings on the wall, and then we went into the shrine room, and there's this stunning golden Buddha, and I remember there were these like white lilies kind of adorning the shrine, just like giving off this amazing like heady scent, and that was kind of mixed in with the incense, and it was just beautiful, and it just felt like I was coming home to something. So I learnt to meditate. I learnt the Metta Bhavana, and then I heard my first Dharma talk, And that was just mind-blowing. It was just like listening to things that I'd been thinking, kind of like had vague notions of as long as I could remember. But hearing someone else articulate them much better than I ever could, and just presenting it in a way that was so confident, and it just set my mind going. I couldn't sleep for about 2 nights after I went to the LBC, because like my mind had been like fed a little bit of Dharma, and it was just absolutely starving, and it just felt like it was being nourished by these teachings that I'd been given, and it was just such a kind of electric buzz. It was so exciting, and so I couldn't stop going, and I haven't yet. It's so hard to describe, I guess. Like when you come into contact with something that you just feel is so right, and just explains everything in a way that matches your experience so perfectly. That's what it felt like to me. So I kept going, and through kind of continuing my practice, I was actually able to reflect a bit, and partly through doing this talk actually, about how I'd been living my life until that point, and kind of coming back to that thing about needing to fill that gap, that kind of sense of abandonment by trying to be the best at something, and realizing firstly like how painful that is, and then realizing as well that I can be enough, and not only can I be enough, but I can actually be a lot more than what I think I can. I can grow. I've seen the people that I see around the centre, just people that have grown so much, and the thought that I could grow in the same way is just so exciting and inspiring. And so that's one of the ways that the Dharma's just had a really, really profound impact on my life, is kind of showing me that I can change, and I don't have to be how I was before. That's something that had always been holding me back, and now it's just a much more kind of creative feeling of moving forward. And the second thing that I'm really grateful for, to the Buddha and to the Dharma, is actually my relationship with my mum. So I was on a meditation retreat earlier this year, and we were meditating, we were doing the Metta Bhavana, and I just saw clearly for the first time what I'd been doing with our relationship. So my mum's still in Canada, she's been there for over 10 years now. And over that time, our connection with each other was just kind of withered, and it was just kind of, it was losing like all of the nutrients, it was just dying, and that I just kind of saw that really clearly, and how painful that was. But then I also saw this like really, really kind of thin thread of love and of connection between us, and I guess reflecting on that more, I was like, well, I can grow that, and I can cultivate that kind of that love, and I can develop that into a relationship. So when I got back off retreat, I wrote a letter to my mum, and that was in the summer, and now we've been writing for like half a year, writing to each other. And in that letter, that first letter, I just kind of told her like how I'd been seeing her, and like how I'd been feeling, and I said sorry for kind of building up this barrier between us, like not letting her know me, but then also resenting her for not knowing me, and just like all of the kind of everything that I just put in the way of us. And I just told her that I wanted to know her, and that's what's started to happen now. When we talk, we get much deeper than we ever did before. And I think like if the Dharma can transform my relationship with my mum, which had been kind of just like this awful kind of festering resentment, which had been going on for like over a decade, if it can transform that, then it just feels like the potential is just absolutely limitless. And that's really why I'm a Buddhist.